Welcome to For the Sake of Heaviness. I'm Butch.
I'm Merciful Mike.
Tonight we're going to be bringing you our favorite drummers.
Our top five heavy hitters that bring the thunder. The top five, that is. We've been thinking about this all week, and we've been thinking about drummers that are well known, and some that made the list are a little less well known, but we're going to go for this. All right, Butch, I'm going to let you fire this off. You got an honorable mention you want to throw in first, right?
Yeah, I want to start with an honorable mention. Now, to preface this, my list, the way that I looked at my list was a lot of times when we do these shows, we'll get into, our favorite drummers of all time or the guys that influence it. And there's a lot of overlap. So I try to pick some drummers that maybe don't get quite the recognition that other drummers do. But so a lot of like some of the drummers I think are the greatest in the world are in my honorables list. But I want to start with one of the guys that I love is Ian Pace
Oh,
from
yeah.
Deep Purple. I just love the vibe when he plays. He's got a swing to his playing. Like he can play fast and harder, and he can lay it back, and there's just cool things that he does. For instance, to me, like when I think of him, actually, like it's not even like a histrionic thing with him. There's this real simple thing that he does in Strange Kind of Woman, where when it comes to the song where it's I want you, I need you, just the way that he times the hits
Yep.
on in between on the cymbal or the hi-hat. It's just cool. It just really like accents that piece of the song. So I mean, his work goes from, like I said, you got the fast ones like Fireball and Speed King, and then he can
Oh,
get
yeah.
funky, like with
Yep.
Getting Tighter. So Ian Pace, one of the greatest of all time.
That's a
That's my
really,
honorable.
really good pick. Yeah. I mean, for an honorable mention, I kind of see why you put him in that spot for the reasons you mentioned. What I always liked about him the most, though, now I'll preface all of this for myself a little bit. I do play drums. I've never played at the level of, the guys we're talking about or even, friends of ours. So I do have that slight bias because when I listen to music, it's the first thing my ear directly goes
Right.
for is the drums. But as far as Ian Pace goes, I always loved how he could transition from just a straight pocket player into these explosive, like progressive fills and off time things like on a dime.
Yeah.
I mean, there's way too many examples to throw out there that show that. But yeah, he was always doing something new, at a moment's notice. And I always picked up on that younger, when you're practicing your rudiments. I was always like, how does he do that? Coming in off time into, yeah, that's a great pick. I have an honorable mention as well, and I went a little more modern, even though he's been around for quite a while. But Matt Thompson, who has been playing with King Diamond for about the last 18, maybe even close to 20 years, just a monster drummer. Now, King kind of went through the Spinal Tap thing with drummers for a while after
Yeah.
Mickey D left, but Matt has been in there for, like I said, about 18, maybe 20 years. Not only has he taken everything that was laid down before him, but put his own spin on it and then some. I mean, the guy is so fluid behind the kit where he can go from just straight metal to progressive to you name it. It's just he's one of those drummers that's an absolute pleasure to watch. You can kind of get lost in watching him perform. So I wanted to throw his name in there too because he definitely deserves some credit.
Right on. That's a good pick.
All right, number five.
All right, number five. I'll do these in alphabetical order because I love all these drummers. It'd be tough. There's one that I'll mention when I get to him. That's probably my number one out of the five. But I want to start with the guy that was the drummer for this band, Angel,
Oh yeah,
in the '70s, and there was some recording that he did with and some touring that light touring he did with Frank in the late '90s, early 2000s, but nothing that came out on a scale like this. But I'm talking about Barry Brandt of Angel, and unfortunately, the band never quite got there. Where's he at? That right down here, right here. Never really got their due. They had a run in the in the 70s they were a popular live band. They were in all the magazines. People certainly knew of Angel. They just never, had a gold record here in the US. They never broke through the way that Kiss did. And
Yeah.
but Barry's a really cool drummer. He's powerful. Like at times he can go from like, that like a Bonham kind of vibe. If you listen
Right.
like Under Suspicion from the White Hot record, it's very like Zeppelin-esque and Bonham-esque. And then the first couple of records, he can go from, songs like The Tower and uh, Broken Dreams and on and on. Like there's more progressive. He can play these progressive things that are, awesome. And then, he just plays straight up hard rock to fabulous snare work. And he plays with
Yeah.
with a, I don't know, I guess is a technical term, match. Not, you have to excuse me. I'm a singer, not a drummer. So he plays with like a traditional grip, like the jazz grip
Yes.
or
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
I've
And
always
he
just called
likes,
it the traditional. Yeah. I know what you
yeah,
mean though.
I wanted to say match, but I'm like, that's not right. But he like can smack the shit out of his
Yeah.
snare doing that. Like he hits really hard and playing that style. But yeah, I mean, I think he's a tremendous drummer. He had a really cool kit too. Like there's sometimes you could see it in some of the pictures. He had these I don't know the name of the company, but the drums kind of like bent
He's got those
forward.
curve. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
know
got
what
like
you
a
mean.
curve thing to it. All white drum kit, really cool. You know, cool visual drummer. So Barry Brandon Angel um is my first pick, and I think all the records are good. I think if you get the first two, they're more progressive in nature, and as it goes on, they're more straightforward.
Yeah.
There's great work on all of them. This album, Live Without a Net, I would point to it covers all the records, and there's a drum solo on it, which is really cool. So, I mean, if you want to get your fill of Barry, this record right here.
Good intro for Barry. Yeah, I know what you mean too. As far as Angel itself goes, I always thought that they were cursed by Kiss being on Casablanca together. I think they were always under that umbrella and kind of got overlooked at the time. It is too bad they couldn't have broken out on their own a little bit because when Kiss started to kind of go one way, it should have been a natural progression that maybe the attention would have gone to Angel and they would have come to the forefront a little more. But unfortunately, that's not how it worked out. So.
Yeah, bad timing.
Yeah, good pick though. Good pick. All right, I'm gonna go and pick this one, and I kind of went back and forth. It's a Judas Priest album. I'm gonna say I love Judas Priest. I'm gonna also kind of throw this out there. I pretty much learned how to play drums listening to Dave Holland. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I know a lot of people refer to him as the human metronome, but I just every album he was a part of was easy for me as a younger kid to pick up on and play. And it just builds confidence because like, here I am, I'm playing Living After Midnight. And then pretty soon I'm like, whoa, I'm playing Screaming for Vengeance. So Dave Holland, hats off to him. The next progression was Scott Travis after him. A lot like Thompson, he is a very fluid, almost on autopilot type drummer. Brought Priest to the next level. But if it wasn't for Les Binks,
Yeah.
we would not be having this conversation at all. I truly feel his playing it still remains far, far understated for what he did for Priest and just for the genre of metal altogether. I know a lot of people are going to point to Exciter as possibly the origin of speed metal, but there's a lot to say there. Not necessarily for speed metal, but just his double bass work that he threw out there on the Priest albums he played on, which was only two studio and the live one, were pretty unmatched at the time. There was some really great, awesome fills that he was doing, and triplets with his feet and everything else. So he really deserves to get the recognition that for all drummers and every drummer conversation. I feel he should be tossed in. I got to say, on a footnote, I'm very, very glad he was included in the Hall of Fame ceremonies. I
Mm-hmm.
just felt awful that he was up there playing songs he had no part in at all.
Yeah.
I thought that kind of was, I don't want to say a slap in the face, but that just kind of didn't sit well with me. But
Yeah,
anyway,
the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it's a weird look sometimes, the way they cobble that stuff
yeah,
together. I think it makes it awkward for everyone involved. So,
yeah, I agree. I mean, it
but
came
yeah,
off well, but I liked Halford's speech, and it was nice that they were cordial with KK, and it was like I said, I'm really glad Les was part of it. But
Yeah, Les is
so,
awesome. He's a great drummer.
oh, fantastic!
Fantastic.
All right,
All
number
right,
four.
number four. Growing up in the '80s, like I did, or like we did, or like a lot of us did. One of my favorite drummers at the time, and I'm go back to Kiss for this one. And as much as I loved what Peter did in the '70s, and I still do, I still think he's was actually underrated for what he did, especially on the first um, three studio records
Mhm.
and up through Alive. Like, but I always thought he was really creative. But uh, Eric Carr
Yeah,
was, one of my favorite drummers in the '80s. Like this album, first of all, is he's thunderous on here. Now I know part of that's the
the
production of
production.
the
Yeah,
record, but the way he plays is so like he just hits them so hard.
yeah,
And it was a change for them. They went from a single kick guy to like Eric Carr's a great double kick drummer.
yeah.
Um, and he gave the music like an energy, like maybe almost too much energy at times. I mean, if you listen to some of the some of those shows, those tours, like when you listen to tapes, like they're going at lightning
Yeah. Oh yeah.
speed. But I think a really good drummer, creative, nice fills, powerful, um, and great fun to watch. And on top of that, not that you really knew it until unless you saw them live, but the dude could sing
Yeah.
too. When he took his turn on Black Diamond or
Yeah.
Young and Wasted, when they would play that live, had a cool rock and roll voice.
Yeah.
So, but we loved Eric Carr, and I was heartbroken when he passed, because there was just something like he was like one of our drummers, man.
Sure.
And a lot of these guys in the '80s, Tommy Lee, Bobby Blotzer, um, a lot of dudes probably got more credit than Eric did when it came to like you'd get your, the Hit Parader and
Yeah.
Circus would have their yearly best ofs and stuff. And I think Eric was like as good, if not better, than a lot of the dudes playing like melodic hard rock
Without
and
a
metal
doubt.
at the time. But for sure, for me, this is the record where he's at.
Yeah.
His peak, which is weird to say because he was in the band for
Right.
close to
Right.
10 years or whatever. But it's just the way that everything came together
Yeah.
on this record. His stuff was he was great on everything that he played. But this record's the essential Eric Carr album, I think.
I definitely agree with you that he was a huge shot of energy. I remember the first time I heard him play Detroit Rock City with the double bass fills.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit. But like you said, it's like they would come out and they would play their songs almost completely double time. They were just pounding away lightning fast. But you know what bothers me about Kiss and Eric Carr is massive and thunderous and like perfect drum sound, and his skills just shine through that whole album. I always thought they dumbed him down for the rest of his tenure in Kiss. I don't know if it was just because they were going along with, the 80s hair or whatever, but they dumbed
Hmm.
it down so much. And I'm like, man, I know he can do so much more back there, but they
Yeah,
just kept, ah,
for sure by the time they got to Crazy Nights, that and Hot in the Shade, they really like kind of reined him in. In fact, I'm that tour for Hot in the Shade, which was a great tour, and then when
mm,
they brought back a lot of the old material too, like I really felt like they really like paid attention to the tempos
yeah.
and stuff too. I think that a lot of what was driving the tempos at the time was they just wanted to keep up with what was going on. They wanted to
Oh,
play
yeah.
faster, more aggressive, and it went to the guitar players that they had. They wanted to be more showy, which is odd because, like you said, as time went on, Eric, he went from being a little bit busier and having more things going on to where it was, more like song oriented,
Yeah.
so to speak. They didn't like unleash him as much.
And I think there's something to say also too. The 80s was definitely the era of the guitar hero. So I think they really pushed a lot of, not that drums are up front all the time, but I think they pushed a lot of it back to let all of the Juan Crocier's Shine and everybody like that. And I think they wanted to make sure, they had Vinny and then they had Mark St. John. And then, I think they wanted Kulik to really shine as their main shredder and, really keep up with the trend of the 80s in that aspect too. So, but
Yeah, and the last thing I want to say about Eric was one of the coolest things that dude did um, was when he'd be doing his drum solo and he would jump up and stand like on the drums. It just looked cool every time he did it.
he's like,
And it was so cool. One of my best friends, who also played drums, also a great drummer, loved Eric. It was we all loved it when he incorporated that into what he was doing with his band in high school
oh,
too.
that's
So,
cool.
but
Little
Eric was
tribute.
cool, man. It was always cool seeing them live and watch. You couldn't help but watch him. He
Yeah.
was like a ball of energy. So
Yeah.
great
Perfect.
drummer.
That's a great pick. Okay. My next one. I mean, if you're in the know, you kind of know, but you don't hear his name too often, which surprises me because for me, this is one of the most, I guess, inventive drummers out there. And every single time I listen to this, I pick out a little something more. So, Merciful Fate, Kim Ruz, unbelievable. This guy was the fill master. I never picked up on it until, a couple of years later when I was getting more into myself
Mm-hmm.
playing and things like that. But when you listen to some of the unusual ways that he approaches fills in and out of the pocket, it just blows my mind to this day too. His footwork is really good too and inventive, but his fills and are crazy. Uh, you know, uh Dangerous Meeting's crazy, but he's got some stuff going on in Nightmare that just every time I listen to it, I'm like, how does he do it? And I can remember trying to replicate a few things and failed miserably. But he's fantastic on Melissa, but Don't Break the Oath to me, it's like, man, they just let this guy go and do whatever he wanted to, and they didn't have any parameters on him. So, but like I said, every time I listen to it, I can hear something different, and I was severely disappointed when Merciful Fate reunited and he was not part of that because
Yeah.
oh man, I was like, yes, I'm gonna see this guy finally. And the last I heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but he quit music altogether and became a mailman in Denmark. I think that's actually what happened. But
That's a bummer, man.
yeah, I mean,
It's a
Snowy
shame.
Shaw
It's
is
so much
no
talent.
no slack. Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, Kim Ruz for me was still to this day. I love listening to everything he does. If I ever need a shot of, just get pumped up, I just listen to that, and I'm like, man, this guy's just crazy.
Yeah, the musicianship on those first couple records were incredible.
Yeah, I mean, all around. I mean, they're all, virtuosos, if you want to say that. But, just speaking directly on percussion and drums, man, that guy was nuts. So,
Yeah, for sure.
well, what's next?
All right. Now, this guy probably is my favorite of the five that I'm going to talk about, and probably um, one of the more. I think he's in a band that a lot of people love. They never really got the huge breaks that other bands did, and that they probably should have. And so I think sometimes he kind of goes under the radar. But I'm talking about Brian Downey
Oh,
of Thin Lizzy. Um, I love his style. The dude could go from playing like straight up hard rock to more metallic kind of stuff when it caught like later in their
right.
career when they went more metal. But then he could play like jazzy stuff and bluesy stuff, and most of the time all on the same album.
Yep.
Like he could do so much so well. A lot of great fills. I think he was great at coming up with the fills. I like his footwork a lot. Um, I just think he did a lot of things really cool, and he for whatever reason, even to watch him too, like he reminds me of in some ways if Keith Moon was a more controlled kind
Okay.
of drummer. I don't know what it is. There's just something about it. Um, but I love the way he always played for the song, but he was so good at what he did. The constant in him and Phil, the constant in the band, him in the back.
Yep.
From day one.
Laying that down. Yeah.
Yeah, still playing. He has his band. I think they're called Live and Dangerous. They go out and play, the
Yep.
Thin Lizzy catalog, and so still playing to this day, and like just so much phenomenal work. It's the classic right here,
Yeah.
and the reason I recommend this one is just because it's like the Angel record. It's got a cross section of
Right.
so much of what the band did, but there's also a drum solo in it, and sha la 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 la. So, but yeah, and like you could tell too, like there's a difference. That if you watch, there's that video of Thin Lizzy in Australia when they
Okay.
played, and they got Gary Moore playing on stage with them, and Gorham, but at the time Mark Nausif was playing drums for him, and as good as he is, like you could just tell there's just something like Downey's playing
Yeah.
is really one of the things that made this band special.
It was very signature to the band, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has his own vibe going on,
Yeah.
and like
And
you
like you
said,
said too, he's very, very versatile. Even within the constraints of one album, he hits all the boxes. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, he could play like go for more, be more straightforward, or
Yeah.
if the song called for it, there's more fills
Yep.
and stuff. So, and I always thought that the fills, like I said, I think his fill work is really creative.
Top notch.
But I love listening to. It's always cool, like there's so much going on these records. I think, and it's cool to key in on him when you listen to them.
Sure. That's another album, live album, I should say, that deserves to be in the conversation quite a bit. That one seems to always get missed when people talk about, greatest live albums of all time. But that one should definitely be in everybody's top 10.
For sure.
All right. I've got another one kind of along the same lines. It's a band that probably should have been much bigger than they ended up being, not for lack of very hard work, but the drummer himself was a machine, and I mean that in all sincerity. Talking about Leonard Hayes from Y&T. I for the longest time thought Leonard played a double kick, and when I realized he was playing a single kick, picked the jaw right up off the floor. Untouchable. The
Yeah,
stuff that Leonard was doing. I mean, fastest single kick in the world. I mean, no, look, just for one example, I mean, Barroom Boogie, in those soft spots in the verses, he's just going to town. But he was another one who's real versatile. He could go, from nice soft stuff to, more of the hard rock and metal. But, and Y&T had those tempos that were all over the place too. But the
yeah,
way that he would lay in that beat and put in those extra fills and his footwork, legend, legend. So, and yeah,
definitely.
yeah, he was always one of those guys that we aspired to be. My friends that were drummers too were like, how does he do it? The guy's he's a machine. So I think Leonard Hayes really, really deserves his due. So that's
For
my
sure.
that's my number 3.
All right. In fact, Mike, I agree so much with you.
Are we on the same page on this, Butch?
He's last in the alphabet of the guys that I had, but I
Yeah.
also have Leonard Hayes on my list. And, like you said, the fastest right foot of. I couldn't believe it when, like you said, I could not believe it when I
Yeah.
realized he was playing with one kick drum. I
Yeah.
mean, first of all, even visually, it was different for the 80s because by that time, everyone was playing the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to hear like what he could do
It was not, it was just
with that
crazy.
one kick, like you listen to like Open Fire on here,
Yep.
and just that foot is just going
Yeah.
the whole time, like forever.
Yep.
When they get to the fast stuff, just his like footwork is just
Yeah.
insane. Like I can't even imagine how, like I said, I'm not a drummer, but I can't even imagine like tapping, being able to keep that while he's got other stuff
No.
going on, keeping that foot like
That
doing and
fast. Yeah.
cool patterns too.
No. I mean, his limb independence was second to none anyway, but to have that kind of speed on a single foot, I've never been able to replicate any of that without a double kick. And I struggle at that with a double kick. But yeah, he's just crazy. He was a monster back there.
Yeah, and it was for me. It's a shame what happened. Every Dave's the only one left
Yeah,
out of the lineup, and it's a shame. Leonard had his issues um, with drugs, and but it's really a shame that they never got their due. I mean, the string of
I
records,
know.
starting with Earthshaker, this one, Mean Streak, and In Rock We Trust, I mean, those four records are
Yeah,
tremendous. They're as good as anything that came out that was more popular. And a lot of times I feel like they didn't get their due because they didn't have like, the same image that all
right.
these other bands had. They kind of fell in between. They were, and Leonard, definitely looked different for what
Yeah,
was
yeah. He
going
wasn't fitting
on.
that image of the '80s, and I
Yeah, he
think that
wears those baseball uniforms and
yeah, yeah, t-shirts and the hats. Like what was the
yeah,
video for Summertime Girls? Like everybody else looks really cool, and then here comes Leonard,
yeah,
kind of rolling in. But yeah, I feel that YT was another band that record labels tried to kind of dumb down and pigeonhole them into the the look of the era, and they wanted that single. But just like you said, and the first two albums are amazing too. I have a real soft spot for Struck Down, but you
there's
know,
some great stuff on that record.
oh God, but yeah, I mean, for me, Earthshaker, Black Tiger, Mean Streak, and to a lesser extent, Rock We Trust. Man, what a run of albums that was, and
Yeah, seriously.
it was very apparent when we heard. I think Down for the Count was the last one with Leonard, and then
With Leonard, yeah,
yeah, what was the next one? Contagious with Jimmy DeGrasso.
Contagious.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that man, that's we tried, but yeah, that fell flat for me.
yeah. I mean, without Leonard, um, I just really feel like kind of like the vibe. I mean, even with even on Down for the Count, where they were definitely at this point desperately trying to, you know, fit in
Yeah,
with more commercial radio and to follow up what they did with Summertime Girls. They Leonard still being in the band, it still gave them kind of like their individual vibe, and I feel
yeah,
like they kind of lost a little bit of that. Although Dave, I think is a unique talent, but not to take anything away from Jimmy DeGrasso, but when they Contagious, the quality of the record aside, I'm not a big
yeah,
fan. I know a lot of people I do know like the record a lot, but
yeah,
it just it's missing something, and I think like Hayes was was a big part of this band.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
all these guys made these records what
yeah,
they are.
yep, yep,
Dave's the main guy, but these the things that these guys did like made them unique, and Leonard was definitely
yeah,
a unique drummer, and
yeah,
I think more people should recognize him.
absolutely. I think that's why we both picked them.
I think so too.
All right, next one. I'm not going to spend too much time on because it's pretty self-explanatory. But I don't know. Young Mike would definitely be a little different, but Bill Ward.
Oh yeah.
I know a lot of people kind of split hairs over John Bonham or Bill Ward. Apples and oranges, I guess. I think that Bill was doing pretty much anything John Bonham could do. He just channeled the darker energy. I mean, there's such a swing,
Mm-hmm.
dark vibe towards playing that I don't know if I've really ever heard it replicated by anybody else at any other time. And again, he was a fill master too. His fills were very timely, very creative, and just matched the vibe of the music too. And he could play in and out of the tempo at times just perfectly, where you listen to it and you're like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. As
Right.
many times as we've heard these albums, you still get those goosebumps when you hear some of the stuff that he pulls off in there.
For
So,
sure.
but I had to bring in Bill Ward.
Yeah, and again, like Bill, I love Bill. Bill's one of my favorite drummers of all time. Also
Right.
on the long list of honorable type mentions that I had.
Sure.
If we were strictly going with who I think the five best heavy drummers of all time, where Bill would have been on my list. I
Yeah.
just wanted to go in a different direction. But
Sure.
even just again, like what I was saying about Ian Pace earlier, there's little things that Ward does that I think are so cool that like endear me to the song, like in Hand of Doom, just that during the verse, just that's what he's playing in there with the cymbals and the
The
or
little
just
rim shots.
the rim shot
Yeah.
kind of thing going on, and the that whole thing, like kind of like if you took that part out, it just
Changes the vibe.
it does, and it just it's that little thing that he does in there that draws me to it. Every I can't listen to it without like kind of like tapping along,
Yep.
which is probably bad when I'm driving a car and people are.
Children of the Grave does that to me every single time. I'm trying to play all the parts, on the steering wheel and the dashboard and everything. So I know what you mean. And, I know that some of that stuff, was a second layer over it, but just the combination of everything that Bill was doing brings it home for Sabbath.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree. Um, okay, my last one. I think of a lot of the drummers that came out of the new wave of British heavy metal. Um, One of the ones we hear the least about from the bands that kind of got, you know, um, popular for a time, but maybe never really broke it here in the United States. But this is a dude that's still like ripping. Like he's still a powerhouse. And there's a reason they call him the engine room. And I'm talking
Oh.
about Nigel Glockler of Saxon. The dude is a fantastic drummer. I mean, he could have played with, you could drop this guy into any band, and I think he'd be great.
Yeah, I'll agree.
He's diverse. He could play like, you know, the old Saxon records. He'd go from playing the more like metal, kind of like not power metal, but the more metal stuff to like they're more like the stuff that leaned on like the more like dirty rock kind of vibe, and they go between the two easily. And now they've been like more like in the power metal kind of vein
Very
for
much,
years now, and he freaking does that great. He's a great double bass drummer.
Yeah.
Um, just a great all around drummer. Still doing it live. I just saw them on this tour with Uriah Heep. The dude is like godly, I think,
Yeah.
and he has a the progressive band too. Damn if I'm spacing on the name now.
I've heard about it. I don't really
They
know
did
much
two
about it though.
records. They did two records now, and I'm such an idiot for not writing that down. Um,
I'm not,
but
I'm not real familiar with it either, but I'm gonna go check it out.
look, he looks so.
It's all
He looks
cool
so.
and calm.
Yeah, and I think he's great, man. Um, all the every record he's on with Saxon is the better for
Yeah.
it, and I'm glad he's still in the band. He's holding up
Oh man,
really,
he's holding
really
up
well.
beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a position where there's a lot of focus on singers over the years, like whether they can still hang, but it's amazing to me. I give so much credit to drummers, the physical toll that
Yeah.
playing, especially the way that a guy like Nigel would play. Like it's not easy to play drums, period, let alone play with the power and do the double bass and the all the stamina
Yeah.
that requires. And
And he still has that aggressive attack too. I saw that tour, I think back in March or April or whatever. And yeah, I agree. I'm kind of focused on that just because of the bias. But man, he didn't miss a beat. He just brought it. He was fantastic. That's a really really good pick. That one kind of slipped through the cracks for me. I might have grabbed that too. That's a really good pick. So all right, I got my last one. I'd be remiss because this guy did it all for me, started it all. He is ingrained in the fabric of my being. So I have to give the nod to Peter
but of
Chris.
course,
Peter Chris on the drums. He did it all for me, and I will go on record here too, and I'll fight anybody. He was untouchable between 74 and 76. Very small window, but he was drumming circles around everybody at that time. That was Peter's peak. And if you go back and look at that old footage from Kobo in 75 of his solo during that, I dare anybody to say that that was not just the most impressive thing you've ever seen. I mean, he came from a jazz background. He had that little swing, but the way he infused that into a hard rock band, I'm not going to quite say they were metal back then, but into that harder rock band, gave it that unique sound and gave Kiss that unique, backbeat that they needed. I think that helped propel them to the superstardom that they had. But Yeah, without Peter Criss starting that, Kiss would have gone nowhere. And
For sure.
man,
He definitely doesn't get the credit that he deserves for
no,
being as creative a drummer
right.
as he was. He does there's so many cool things. And there's a video out there on YouTube. I don't know the guy's name who did it, but it's a video where he dissects the solo from 100,000 Years
I know
on
exactly
that
which one you're
record.
talking about.
And he
Yeah,
talks about, he's like, that piece is not as easy to play
right.
as you think it is to get it. And it's like when he goes through it, you're like, holy, I mean, I love
Yeah,
that drum solo anyway, like you were saying, but when he goes through it and you realize like the bits and pieces to it, you're like, wow. I
yeah.
mean,
Well, even Eric Singer admitted too, when he was learning it and playing everything correctly, he said, that shuffle on Detroit Rock City, that snare shuffle, he's like, he goes, people don't understand exactly what he's doing there. He goes, that even took me a while to master and make it sound exactly how it should. I mean, and it goes to say too, supposedly the only thing that they actually kept from the original tapes
for the
is the
drums.
drums.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you want to listen to a performance drum wise, I mean, the entire album. I mean, it's a clinic. So, yeah, Peter Criss, man. That's my guy right there.
Yeah, he was awesome. Yeah.
All right. Well, there's our top 5 drummers for Butch and I. We have a special guest that decided to send us a little clip after we spoke with him. We said we wanted to have Corey Webb from Apostle of Solitude send in his top 5. So we're going to cut right over to an interview with Corey and his top 5 drummers of all time.
What's going on? Corey Webb from Apostle of Solitude here. Hey, if you're not already familiar with us, check us out. We'd appreciate it. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary as a band this year. We're honestly pretty proud of that. And our 5th and most recent full-length album, Until the Darkness Goes, is available directly from the band at apostlesolitude.com, Cruz del Sur Music, anywhere else online where you get your music. Check it out. We appreciate it. Anyway, my friends Mike and Butch asked me to do a short video about my top 5 favorite drummers of all time. I think my top 5 are probably pretty typical with a lot of people who are into heavy music. Primarily for me anyway, because I think these guys that I'll mention here in a few minutes, to me anyway, they represent the foundations of what would be considered modern rock drumming. Before I get into that, let me preface all this by saying there's a couple key things that I look for personally in a drummer that I dig when I see drummers that I like. I think these are things, in my opinion, that makes a good drummer good. Good, of course, being a totally subjective term when it comes to art. What one person digs in a drummer is probably not what, same thing that another person is into. For me, anyway, the number one thing that I really look for that just I dig about drummers is somebody who hits the damn drums. Drums are fun to play, especially when you're in heavy, playing heavy rock music. I like to see somebody who hits the drums like they mean it. Purposeful, intentional playing doesn't necessarily mean you need to bust through the head, but it's commensurate with the gravity and the intensity of the music that you're playing. Just personal opinion, of course, but when you're watching some heavy band out there and then you see the drummer back there, they're just kind of going through the motions and lightly tapping along. It just doesn't do it for me. It doesn't sell it for me. It takes away from the song. In fact, personally, I want to see a drummer who hits the drums with some level of enthusiasm, or it's apparent that he or she is having fun to some degree and enjoying what they're doing. And another thing that I'll mention that I like in certain drummers is there's something to be said about technical ability versus style and appropriate level of playing. Sure, it's impressive, to see some virtuoso who's playing these, super technical polyrhythm and some sort of a weird time signature combo. That's cool and all, and it has its place, but it's just not really what I'm into when I watch bands. Very generally speaking, I feel like the drummer's number one role, aside from keeping steady time, of course, is to serve the song. More often than not, I think less is more when it comes to drums. And I think there's probably many a great song out there that's been diminished by a drummer who's overplaying. What I mean by that is not every space needs to be filled with a drum part. Oftentimes it's been said, and I agree, that it's the spots where you don't play that are the most impressive. Subtle, tasteful fills, accents, ghost notes, that sort of thing, hi-hat chirps. I think that sort of thing often serves the song better than some insanely technical drum fill across 5 rack toms, you know. I just think, very generally speaking, the drummer shouldn't be the focal point of the song. Maybe an exception to that would be Travis Owens when he played drums in Weed Eater. I thought that was badass, and that definitely has its place. But again, there's exceptions to the rule. I just don't think that the drums are the focal point of the song often. Play what complements and accentuates the music, not necessarily the flashiest thing you can come up with. Then again, if you ask Danny Carey from Tool about that, he'd probably say, well, sure, that's what some guy who can't do what I do would say. And I would say, touche, Danny. Anyway, on to my top 5. Top drummer, without a question, definitely John Bonham. Just favorite drummer in the world to me. I still remember very vividly when I heard that first, the fourth Zeppelin album, and that was my introduction to Zeppelin from my dad's record collection. And specifically, I remember hearing When the Levee Breaks and just thinking, my God, I want to do that. I want to be a drummer. That's just so cool. Number 2 would be Bill Ward. Obviously, Sabbath drummer, just such a heavy hitter, especially for that time. You know, you can't help but watch videos of him playing drums and just be in awe, just how massive of a drummer he was, and just his presence. It was awesome. Number 3, close behind Bill, would be Vinny Appice. Again, Sabbath drummer, also Dio, obviously. Younger brother of Carmine Appice from Cactus, etc. They pronounce their last names differently. I have no idea why. Anyway, I think Vinny, just the definition of tasteful, controlled, in the pocket heavy. Chuck from Apostle Solitude and I actually got to meet Vinny a few years ago. Just super humble guy, and we got to watch him up close playing drums, which was just an absolute honor. Great drummer. Number 4 on my list would be Bernard Purdie, Pretty Purdie. Bernard is primarily an R&B soul drummer, but I mean, the list of who this guy has played with is a mile long. James Brown, Aretha Franklin, Steely Dan, B.B. King, Hall & Oates. It's just insane. The Purdie Shuffle, that's one of the things that Bernard came up with, of course, based on triplets and ghost notes, and it's a variation of the shuffle that's obviously been around before that. Jeff Porcaro did a little bit of that with Toto, of course, and Bonham, Zeppelin, Fool in the Rain sort of thing. But just the way that Bernard plays drums, when you watch some videos of that guy playing drums. I mean, you can't watch him play without smiling. It's just, he's just having fun, and he just loves what he's doing. You can tell that comes through, and I really dig that. Okay, number 5, and this was a bit of a tough choice for me. I'm going to go with Chuck Biscuits. Chuck, of course, played punk bands back in the day, DOA, Circle Jerks, Black Flag, but I'm primarily talking about the first 4 Danzig albums. Just such a heavy, massive hitter, just raw intensity. Watch the video for Bodies off of the 3rd Danzig record. Just the way that he hits the drums, it's just, it's inspiring to me, and it's awesome. That's it. That's my top 5. Number 1 in my book, just enjoy it. Play how you like to play. There are no rules. Hit the drums hard, hit them soft, play the most insane thing you can come up with, or just hold it down in the pocket. Most importantly, just have fun. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Thanks, Mike, Butch, for the opportunity. You guys rule. Cheers.
All right. Big thanks to Corey Webb for that top 5 drummers of all time on his side. All right. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. It was all about drums and drummers, but we've got more planned in upcoming episodes. But tell us what you think. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you want to hear more of. Hit the comments, blow them up, smash that subscribe button. We really want to hear what you think because we've got a lot planned and a lot more on the way. So,
Hell yeah.
until next time, we will see you on the next episode of For the Sake of Heaviness.
Keep it heavy.